This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and we are halfway through here with the second week of what I'm calling the 2024 Diageo Special Release Bowl Series. Already tasted half of the 8 special releases for this year. Right now, we're going to taste the remaining 4, including that 21-year Benrinnes, and we're going to pick a winner. My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts. If you missed the first episode, I'm going to put the link right up here so you can check it out. That was the first 4, and we called that the Peat Bowl. Today we're calling this the Barley Bowl because we don't have peated whiskeys here, and we have the remaining 4 of this year's 2024 Diageo Special Releases. I was able to get my hands on 8 samples of all 8 of the 2024 special releases. If you are not familiar, very quickly, every year Diageo, whose core ranges are often held back by some pretty poor presentations, puts out 8. The distilleries rotate. They're not always the same. Special releases, cask strength, properly presented one-offs for that year. And so I split them up into 2 groups. Last week, it's a blind tasting flight just like this in the blue glasses, randomly placed. I don't know which is which. I selected a winner. I'm going to do the same thing today. And the winners are going to face off in 1 week from today in the finals. I'm going to crown the champion, the best of the 2024 Diageo Special Releases. So I assigned each of the bottles ranks just based on looking at the price tags and the age statements before I ever sampled any of them. So they're not very meaningful, but the lowest ranked whiskey in the field, we're going to start with the number 8 ranked whiskey, the only non-age statement whiskey in the field, Mortlach, the oxymoronic Midnight Dusk, and it's 57.5% whiskey. It comes with a $300 sort of MSRP price. These prices for these whiskeys, again, as a reminder, vary pretty wildly. Some of them are in demand and they get marked up. Some of them are not. Matured in refill and first fill bourbon, and then it's finished in some relatively exotic wine casks. Ramandolo, an Italian sweet white wine, and Sangiovese red wine casks. It is only the second most expensive whiskey in the field. Moving on to the 4th ranked whiskey in the competition, Roseisle, the Origami Kite. It's a 12-year whiskey, 55.6%. This is the second year in a row Roseisle has been one of the 8 appearing in the special releases, and that was their first appearance last year. This one in refill and first fill bourbon, and about $150 suggested price tag. Moving on to the 3rd ranked whiskey in the field, Singleton of Glen. This is the only Highland non-Speyside whiskey in this group of 4, called the Autumn Walk, and they have 3 parcels here: bourbon matured, rejuvenated casks that were wine casks, and rejuvenated again is Diageo speak for STR. Casks, a way of again rejuvenating these casks, shaving, toasting, and recharring the casks. And here we also have refill casks in the mix. That vatting from the parcels was then finished in European oak, a 14-year whiskey coming in at 54.7% with about $155 price tag. Then we have the big, heavy favorite in the field. The Benrinnes Grand Crescendo is 21-year Benrinnes, 55.4%, 8 years in refill casks, 13 years in wine-seasoned American and European oak, and rejuvenated STR casks with charred ends. This is a $480 bottle. So it's time for kickoff. The teams have taken the field, and I am going to start, as I always do in these blind tastings, from this side, work my way, go through the noses, then move on to the palates and finishes. And I'm going to start here with whiskey number 1. Again, set blind, you know what they are, I don't. These are all cask strength whiskeys, and they are all, I think, the lowest ABV in the entire field. I said last week was 54%. This one is real subtle. It is not leaping out of the glass. Some sweetness, creamy vanilla, some oak, green, kind of grassy, some pepper spice, maybe a little citrus, not a lot of fruit here in whiskey number 1. So moving on, whiskey number 2 on the nose. This one's much brighter, a little sharper, Fruit here, a little bit more tropical, maybe a pineapple, toffee, sweet, a little bit of honey. It's just not hot. I'm taking big, long draws off this, trying to find the notes, and it is pretty approachable here, even at these high ABVs. Raisin, definitely getting some of that dried fruit now. Orange, some sherry-like flavors coming out the nose here on whiskey number 2. Moving on to whiskey number 3 on the nose. Yeah, not hot, sharper still on this one. Definitely the fruit is really up front here, and we're talking about peach, lots of apple here, grape maybe. Something else offsetting that fruit note. A little bit earthier, maybe almost meatier. Something sweet, berry, candy sweet on that one. And now, moving on to whiskey number 4 on the nose. Yeah, what a difference here. This one's rich. This one is nice. It is chocolate, coconut, a little bit of leather to it. I mean, you can just inhale. It's just not hot. There is a caramel, almost like a mocha coffee kind of element to it. Very nice balance on this one. All right, going back through the nose, I really like nose on whiskey number 4. Then I'm gonna go to whiskey number 1, whiskey number 3, and then 2. It's a little sharp. Here we go with the palates. Starting over here again, whiskey number 1. Okay, really nice, rich mouthfeel. These are big ABV whiskeys. Really nice presence on this one, a nice balance. Flavors are rich. There's a caramel, yeah, almost a chocolatey sweetness cut through with a nice red berry. There's some nice pepper texture to it. It's not oaky, it's not bitter, but there is that sort of offsetting presence. There's some presence of the wood without the bitter, without the tannins. Not really oak spice, but there's just some ballast there on that palate. It's nice. Now we have a little presence of some heat here on the palate, but the biggest example of heat I've seen anywhere so far, and we're not that far, on the finish here. Not really lingering, lasting, heat in the chest, but stays on the tongue, holding it on the tongue, trying to find those flavors, getting a lot of that pepper, and now talking. I've almost had the numbness, holding that for so long. So this one comes off as a little bit hotter. It also comes off really strongly tart green apple. It's nice, but it's big. There is a vanilla caramel element, but it's not kind of blending together like caramel apple. So that apple element is really up front on top. Again, that sort of pepper spice. Let me go back and see if I can find something past that dominant note. There's something else there. It's nutty, maybe. Okay, so this one is probably the weakest mouthfeel. I mean, it's not watered down 40%, but just relative to the feel, it doesn't have nearly the presence that these two have. It's not as hot as whiskey number 2. Caramel, honey. There's a leather on the palate. It's much more subtle as well on the flavor notes on the palate. It's a darker fruit, a richer fruit, maybe that sort of fig, maybe that. It's not quite raisin, but it's in that genre of fruit here on whiskey number 3. Now the final palate, whiskey number 4. There's not a lot of space between these in terms of the palate. Again, not a huge volume in terms of the flavors over here. This one's more nutty, buttery, it's rich. In terms of fruit, I'm getting more on the finish, so I'm trying to separate it out. It's a little bit more of the richer, more savory kind of element. I'm gonna go back because that's so dominant on the palate and see what else I can find in there. Vanilla, pear probably. In terms of fruit, a little bit of that pepper spice. Not nearly as spicy as over here in whiskey number 2, but a little bit more spicy than here. Okay, so ranking these was not easy. And let's just say, at this point, 2/3 of the way through this, one of these whiskeys costs $500, and I don't know which one it is. Honestly, I'm just gonna say there isn't some huge gap here. I'm gonna say this was the best palate. I'm gonna say 4, 3, 1, 2. Settle this out. We're going to have to go to the finishes, starting over here once again. It's a little hot on the finish, not too much. I feel something. It's not really full sort of heat. I feel something still, having gone. I don't really need to kind of take a breath before I can start talking. Not super hot. It's really oaky. There's some chocolate. It's pretty rich, but it's not even that nice kind of coffee and chocolate. It's pretty oak tannin. Not that peppery, but the oak is really dominant on the finish here. Let me go back real quick to just get past that. Yeah, that oak is really big, and then you get a wave, and it's almost like a sour citrus right behind it. So the bitter of the tannins and that sour, it's a little samey. You get a real sinus full of it. And I will say it's not my favorite part of whiskey number 1 on the finish. So whiskey number 2 now on the finish. Okay, so this one is a little bit hotter. I can still feel it, kind of that warmth in the chest. It's not unpleasant. These are cask strength whiskeys. But it's hotter than the one we just had. And it's a little different. This one is pretty, like I was saying, like candy sweet almost. Some oak. It's clean. This is a very bright whiskey. It's very clean on the finish, if that makes sense. And it is not richly sweet. I'm not using some of those other kind of standard descriptors. There's a sweetness here, but it's probably sort of a base kind of vanilla sweet with those other sort of fruit elements, the citrus elements, kind of much more dominant. It's a sweet citrus though. It's not a sour lemon, and it's not full orange. It's sort of a hybrid, but it is pretty pleasant. Whiskey number 3 on the finish. I'm getting a real, a more savory element, nutty. Yeah, there's a chocolate, I think, sweetness underneath. It's not a full like sweet milk chocolate, but it's not dark either. It's enough to stand up to those bolder flavors, and it's a pretty nice finish, but I will say it's the shortest. Not huge, not long, but nice. Oak, ginger, chocolate, nut, peanut. Nice. It's nice to have kind of from different sides of the wheel here. Still kind of richness here on this whiskey number 4. Might be the shortest finish. These two are shorter than these. So I'm ready to rank the finishes. Again, another really close call for the top 2. But we have some changes. I'm going to say that the best finish is this whiskey, number 3. Closely followed by whiskey number 4. Sort of a gap. Whiskey number 2. And I just did not love the finish on whiskey number 1. It's clearly the weakest finish. So we had a lot of consistency between the palate and the finish. The nose kind of had the biggest variance. And so I am going to say that the weakest whiskey in the field is going to be whiskey number 2. Not a bad whiskey, but this is the weakest. It came in last in 2 of the categories and didn't do any better than 3rd. This whiskey is the Mortlach. A weirdly sweet. I had not had that in my mind that this was the Mortlach. Non-age statement. It comes in last. It's if you're looking at that for the price that I've seen listed, it's outrageously overpriced. Moving on to the third place whiskey, really sunk by that finish, but never placed first. It's gonna be whiskey number 1, and I knew this was gonna happen. I just knew it. It is the Benrinnes. It is the big heavy favorite, and it was not bad, but it really struggled to distinguish itself in any of the 3 stages. I have it with a really strong nose. That's what threw a curveball in the nose. This one was the second best scoring on the nose, but it came in last on the finish. And I really did not like the finish on this whiskey. I'm not shocked. I knew going in there was a very strong possibility of some curveball, and I'm not shocked that is the outcome. I'm very intrigued to see who the winner is. So the third place whiskey is going to be whiskey number 3. This is the Singleton. And so that whiskey had the best finish in my scores, but I'm looking at it. It didn't finish first in anything else, and the nose was a little weak. It came in third on the nose. So we did not have a sweep. This is the winner. It is the Roseisle. And it wasn't the best finish, but it won first place for me in the nose and the palate. Another final flight to crown the winner of the 2024 Diageo Special Releases. In some ways, huge upset here with this big high age statement whiskey failing to advance. So it's anybody's sort of game here next week. Make sure you don't miss it. Subscribe, hit this button that's popping up right over here so you do not miss the final. And I will see you on the next one.